When fly fishers gather and talk about chalk streams, the immediate thing that springs to mind is the famous mayfly hatch, the so-called Duffer's Fortnight. It only gets its name Duffer's Fortnight because there's these massive flush hatches that come off for instance, on the Test, where the fish go absolutely ballistic, and where it brings the biggest fish of the season up. But on the Avon, for instance, the hatch trickles along. You don't get big masses of duns coming off. They just sort of trickle along, starting about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they'll just start popping off in ones and twos. It takes fish about half an hour to respond to them, and then they just start picking one or two up. And in fact, the keepers told us that this hatch, it trickles along all summer, and they've had them coming off the water as late as September. The other thing that you've got to bear in mind about mayflies, something that we've seen, and I've known for quite a while, there's a great disparity of size between the males and the females. Males are significantly smaller than the females, and they can be, on the Avon for instance, on the upper Avon, they can be half the size of the female, and you think you're almost looking at a different species altogether. So it's as well to have a couple of sizes, I think, for mayflies, large ones and small ones. The fly we're going to tie is the one that copies Ephemera danica, what we call the mayfly. This confuses the Americans, because rightly Americans call the whole of the Ephemeroptera, that's the insects with two large upright forewings and either 2 or 3 long tails, they're all mayflies. We just call this thing that comes off in late May and early June, we call that the mayfly. They call it the green drake, and I think we should all call it the green drake. It would cut out all this confusion. So what I'm going to tie now is my favourite pattern, my Mohican Mayfly. It's a detached foam-bodied mayfly which copies it more or less perfectly. I'm going to start off with a needle in the vise. I'm going to do this detached body on a needle. Now this is my latest version of the Mohican Mayfly. The first one, the one that's in Masterclass, is done, the detached body, the whole lot's done entirely on the hook. When I wrote the book, this material, Moser Power Silk, wasn't available. And if you tried to do a detached body on a needle with a standard twisted thread, something like Danville's Flymaster or any of the others, twisted threads, you'll find you'll do a perfect body, but you won't be able to pull it off the needle. Now with this material, you have no problem at all doing any detached bodies with this power silk, or gel spun polyester, GSP for short, of course. There it is, that's your underbase, your body's built up on top of that, and it all just slides off. So what we do is, first of all, start with your thread back about 1 inch, and just lay on the power silk, come to almost the point, and then just lock over them going backwards, then come forwards. Park your thread about 1 millimetre from the point, and I'm now ready for my tails. And for tails I'm using this material. This is moose body hair. It's about 3.5 inches long. I like it because it's nice and thick and quick tapering. Take off a small clump and then hold the very tips, and slough out all the shorter fibres. What I'm looking for is long straight fibres. And then I just tamp them onto the palm of my hand. That's good enough. And take out now any short fibres. And what I'm looking for are 4 or 5. And I've got 5 there, so I'll take another one out. I know the natural has only got 3, but put an extra one in for insurance. Turn them round. Now offer the tails up, and let the tails overhang the needle point by about 1 inch. Proportions are easy to remember: 1 inch wing, 1 inch body, and 1 inch tail. Circle round with your thread, and now just lash those down to the needle, back in your finger and thumb back, and now come back down. Park your thread right where you made your first wrap, and now you're ready for the body. For the body, I'm using this close self foam. It's about 2mm thick, and this particular colour is a sort of a cream colour. You can use cream or white, it doesn't really matter. The shape I'm going to cut, I'll use a straight edge, is like a long, slim, extruded dicky bow shape. I come down about 4mm and I cut a long sloping cut heading in towards the centre of the foam to about 2mm wide. And then come out again at the same angle to make a mirror image. So there's my cut piece. And then in the centre there, where it's at its thinnest, I cut a V-notch. Just take a notch out. Like that. It's about 4mm wide there, tapering down to about 2.5mm wide. I fold it now, broad face to broad face, both broad edges are together. Make sure they're sitting side by side all the way along like that. There's my V-notch. Offer this up, coming from the underside, between the thread there, and I come up and I push it up there, that's into the V-notch. So the tails are sticking out now essentially from the centre of the two foam tags. I bring my fingers to the end, squeeze in there, crush the foam, circle round with my thread, just about 1mm in from the end, 1, 2 turns, and that's my first segment. Fold those two foam tags back, bring the tying thread in front onto the needle, and forward one segment space. Fold the foam back down. Every time you make a new segment, do make sure that the needle is sat central in the foam. And now make segment number 2. 1, 2, and pull. That's your second segment. Fold them back again, bring the tying thread to the front, come forward another segment spacing. That distance there, from there to there where the thread is hanging, is 1 segment width. So, put your foam tag back down, stretch it slightly, circle round. There's segment number 3. Foam back, thread to the front. Keep the segments reasonably even. In fact, as you're going along, you can slightly make your segments wider. In actual fact, it's opposite to nature. On the actual mayfly, the segments near the tail are the widest and they get narrowest as you go towards the thorax, but fish don't seem to mind. Keep it nice and slim. They're quite slim, our mayflies. Don't make them fat. Foam tags back onto the needle. I sort of do an assessment now of the total length of the fly. Don't make a full insect's worth of segments on the needle. Remember, you're going to have 2 segments on the hook. So you tie this abdomen 2 segments short of full length. There's the hook, and I'm assuming where the body's going to sit. And so I think I want the last segment to be about there. I think about 1 more segment will do this. So hold back, tying thread to the front, Come along one more segment pitch, fold back down, make sure the needle is central, and there's my final segment. Run some thread off and come straight round with a 2-finger whip in that segment groove. 2 or 3 turns is enough. Don't pull too tight. The last thing you want to do is to chop this off. This thread will cut through this foam dead easy. Leave about a couple of inches and cut through. And now, abracadabra, close your fingers round, pull it off the needle. Get your needle out now, otherwise you'll skewer yourself, and it's damn painful when you do that. Get your needle out and get it safe. What I do now, I get the detached body. There's my detached body. Sit it on the table on a nice flat polished surface with me middle finger. Give it a real hard rolling. And what that does, that sort of moulds the sides in where the slit between the two pieces of foam is. It sort of runs them together, and you can't, a bit like Ernie's wig, you can't see the join. And what you've got now is a nice, neatly segmented, very, very soft, fish won't eject this, pliable, juicy, soft body. That's the nice detached abdomen. There in the centre, if I hold those back, there in the centre are the tail butts. You're going to tie those down when you tie it on, because I could simply get hold of the body and get hold of the tails and pull them through. So I do several of these, put them in a Ziploc bag. You might forget about them for ages, and then whenever I want to tie some green drakes, they're there. So set that to one side, and now tie the wing part. Grip the hook on the heel there. The hook I'm using are these are short shank and very wide gape. You need a good wide gape because you're going to be hooking good big fish, you hope. So don't go tying it on normal gape hooks. Go for a wide gape hook. I like these. These are these Captain Hamilton International middleweights. And I'm using a size 10. Mash down the barb. And then, using this same power silk, get the thread on in the centre of the shank. Just go up and down a few times, laying on a thread base of about 5 or 6 millimetres. Work with the short nozzle, just come underneath the shank. Off with your waste. And now the wing's going to be from deer hair. Olive dyed white-tailed deer. You can see I've given it a good thrashing there doing these. That's a piece of yellow dye. That's a little bit garish, is that? It would do at a pinch. And I've also got some dark olive. That's ideal for the ephemera vulgata, the dark mayfly. So I use this. And I'm going to take off a small clump, a smallish clump, cutting right down as close as you can to the pelt. Turn it round, and with a fine comb, just comb through the butts just to take out the underfur. Any underfur, this fine underfur here, that will stop this clump of deer hair stacking. So you comb it out, and then what you've got to do now is you've got to sit all those tips out all over the place, just as I've cut them off the pelt. So you've got to stack them so that all the tips are in line. You get a hair stacker. These go in, remember, tip first. It's the tip alignment you're after. Drop your hair in and let them just shake down. Any bits sticking up, you can just take them out. What you've got to do now is you've got to shock them, you've got to jolt them to sit on the blind end of this tube. So make sure that the wife ain't watching when you do this, otherwise if you do it on her best table, she'll be very annoyed. And what you're doing is you're jolting all the tips down onto the bottom, making them all stand up on their tips. Now when I hold this horizontal, slide the socketed part out from the base. All the tips are all neatly in line. There's a butt there I can see. Sometimes you get a butt, a hair goes the wrong way round. Now when you take, this is a point to remember, when you take the hair clump out, make sure now that you don't start trading grips from this hand to this hand. One trade grip is about all you're allowed. So if you want the wingtips at this end, pick them out of the stacker that way. If you want the wingtips at that end, pick them out that way. So I'm going to tie this now. I've changed it round slightly with this improved Mohican of mine. I used to tie them in with the wingtips facing in that direction, but now I tie them in this direction. So now I pick them out, just grip quickly like that. Don't worry about the butts being uneven, they're meant to be uneven. Just slough out any short fibres. Search for any short fibres, you don't want them in. And then get hold of the wing and flatten it in a vertical stack. One change of hands, that's all. Just one. I'm looking now at wing density, how many fibres. I rotate my finger and thumb like that. Just rock backwards and forwards like that, and that spreads the clump. That gives me an idea of how many fibres to use for the wing. It's nicely flattened, it's already Mohicaned, and I can see that I need several fibres out of that. So I take them from the bottom and I just peel them off like that. Don't go pulling them out up here, just pull them down like that from the bottom there and peel them out. Right, that's perfect, is that? One stray one there which I'll have out. Now, take your thread to about centre hook shank. Sit the wing on, look at it as you're holding it for wing length. I want the wing to be about 1 inch long, maybe just a tad less than 1 inch. Offer it down. This is my last trade of grips. I come round with my non-winding hand and hold them there. Squeeze now so that the hair mass, the hair clump, is sat vertical. Not all together, it's sat vertical in like a stacked column going higher. Circle around with the thread, tuck it into there, do a pinch and loop, upward pull, keeping the stack vertical and just sort of jostling them about. Just stack them down and nip them down on top of the shank. What you're trying to do is you're trying to keep these all on top of the shank and none down the sides or underneath. Don't pull too tight with this power silk because it will slice through this deer hair like a hot wire through butter. And now you can progressively add tension on. Still keeping a firm grip there with me finger and thumb. You can see the butts are flaring quite wildly. That's how they should do. After 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 turns, I reckon that's tightly in. Slide your finger and thumb back a little bit. Now I can risk snipping off that waist. So go around and start getting some of this junk off and trim off all the waste. And the cleaner and closer you do this trimming, the better. And there's my nice Mohican wing. hold the bobbin up and get in there and trim off all the waste. And a handy little tool, of course, for cleaning up is the old cauterizer. Just singe these off. So you can just go around. Do watch your thread though, because if this hot tip touches your thread, it's off. Don't try doing this with new batteries. If this element glows, you've no chance. It'll zap the whole lot off. You want fairly old, knackered batteries. Having trimmed those off, you can go into there now, where I've just cleaned up, with your thread, and crush that down even more, and consolidate that. Just scarf that down even tighter. Fine, that'll make a lovely wing. Lift the wing up and bring your tying thread to the back. 2 or 3 times to bead it up. And also a couple straight round it like that. With moderate tension, otherwise it'll flare too widely. And what I do at this stage, I will just get my head cement. You just want to now make doubly sure that this wing's not going to come out during use. That's the main thing. So with some very thin head cement, I just run it in and let it suck into those cut ends. So now, hold the wing forward with a cross-hand wrap. Bring your tying thread now all the way to the end of the shank, right to where it's just started to go around the bend, about there. Get your body. Hold the 2 tags back, just like that. Stroke all them rubbishy bits forward, all the waste, the 2 bits of thread, the 4 bases of your tails. Hold the wing forward, lay the body in there, and come straight round with a wrap and catch that down. That's the waste thread and the 4 butts. Then you can take your scissors and detach the waste. The thread will have to be held under tension to cut. Position your thread slightly forward, just assume where your next segment's coming. Fold the foam round. Circle round. And make the first segment on the hook shank. So there's your body on the fly. Pull back and make the last one snug up to the back of the wing. So drop my thread over. And now hold the wing forward. With that finger, look, I just do that there and there. Circle round. Now at this stage, those 2 foam tags, coax them to stick up at an angle. Get them quite upright and consolidate that with another couple of wraps. And there's your nice abdomen, there's your tails. So I've just to hackle it now. Before I hackle it, I'm just going to bring my thread to the front, sweep that back, just come like that with your finger and thumb, and bring your tying thread. Sweep that back, Just come like that with your finger and thumb and bring your tying thread and that little area there, this little area here, I'm just going to dub out with dark dubbing. A dubbing that's almost black and a little bit of dark olive, because mayflies they're quite dark in the thoracic area. I'm not even going to bother mixing it, I'll just twist it in as it is, just scarf it in. You only want a light covering of dubbing. Hold them back again. And I mostly work dubbing under this part, under there. Right under there. So I do that by taking my dubbing back like that. And I'm just going to dub that area out. Tiny bead of dubbing to hide those ugly wing roots. At this stage, your two foam tags want to be quite vertical, like that. For the hackle, I'm using two. I'm using a grizzle dyed yellow and a natural blue dun. So remember, don't go for what I call standard hackle length now. This is going to be like semi-parachuted. So you can afford to use some of these bigger ones at the back. Normally we're using here on your 16s, 18s and 20s, but these flies give you a chance to use this larger stuff, which you rarely use. That's okay. Tweak that out. This is a double hackled fly. So it's a grizzle dyed yellow and a natural blue dun. So I'm obviously looking for a feather that's the same size as the yellow one. Check the barb length before you tweak it out. Yeah, that fibre length's about right. They're both genetics. So now the part I want is the stiff, steely fibres up towards the tip. All this down here is far too soft for hackling a big fly like this. So strip off there, strip off. Snip off the butt. Treat this the same. Strip off there. And now I'll lay one on the other, sit one over the other. It doesn't matter which direction, as long as it's sitting together like a nest of tables. There's a difference in hackle shape, but basically, if I do that, you can see that the hackle tips, the barb tips are about the same. Offer this in now. And what you've got to decide now is whether you're going to tie it in that way, winding that way, or in front, facing me, and winding that way. And I'm going to tie them in this direction. So I hold the wing fibre back. Set your two hackles there and circle round and catch them in snug up to the front of that wing. And the thread should bite deeply into the dubbing. Check the hackles, and if they seem as though they're going to shift, make another couple of turns and snip off the waist. Now what you do, you make sure that the wing is central between the two foam tags. Any wing that's got displaced, push it back between the two foam tags. Otherwise it's not going to be a Mohican Mayfly. And now I'm ready to hackle the fly. Take your first hackle, doesn't matter which one, hook on the hackle pliers, and now come round both wing and tags. Just lift that wing up slightly and go round that, keeping it flat. So come round now and just keep parachuting this on, When you've made about 3 passes, I just drape that over there. And now the trick is to tie this hackle off without trapping too many fibres down. So wind the bobbin holder, wind the bobbin till the nozzle is touching the dubbin. And keeping that nozzle there, just circle round. Work with a short nozzle. So if you just wind it up every time you make a pass over the top, you'll find it'll push the fibres out of the way. You will trap some, but mostly they remain untrapped. And then take your scissors, and then you can snip off that waste tip. Then pick the yellow up, hook on, and now come round. Just wind this in exactly the same place as the first one. If you're really clever, you might be able to wind both hackles at once. But when I do that, I find that there's one's tight and one isn't tight. And again, I'm making about 3 turns. Drape that over. Again, the short bobbin trick, the short nozzle trick. Circle round, and that pushes the fibres out of the way. Keep it tucked up to it. And then you can trim off that waste tip. Now what I do, I look on top and I make a parting. I pull them to left and right, these fibres. You've got a full diameter of a full sort of parachute of hackle, and I'm going to open them there. I'm going to do that. And this gives you a chance to see how many fibres you have trapped down. And there is a few there, but I'm not going to worry about it. All I'll do is I'll take my scissors or my hot tip, and I'll just get rid of some of those. And you can take them off. You can also, if you want, use your little cauterizer and just they're my trapped fibres. I can live with these. I've got plenty, so I'll just either singe or clip these off. Bring my thread back a little ways from the eye, just coming up to that dubbin. And now I'm ready to complete that thorax. Now get your 2 foam tags, and these want to trap the wing. Just primp the hackle fibres back into place. Make sure now that the 2 foam tags, I've got the wing inside them. Make sure the wing is central. The 2 foam tags go over the hackle but sandwich the wing. So bring the tags till they're face to face there. Get hold of the wing tips and drag them back. There's the wing. Keeping that hackle separated at the front, you crush these 2 foam tags together, hold the hackle back, squeeze the foam tags there so that it Mohicans a wing, hold the hackle out of the way, stretch slightly, come over with your thread, pass it underneath and go around a couple of times and cinch it down, keeping it on top of the shank. Check at this stage that you haven't trapped a lot more fibres. If you have, you can use a dubbing needle, or the tool I like is this little dental pick. Simply hook out the fibres. Just hook in and hook them out. Okay, and then finally tie that down, stretch it slightly, tie that down firmly. So 3 or 4 wraps there clinches the thorax. Any fibres there, any whiskers there, you can just trim them off. Or this does a neater job actually. And just tidy up round the eye. Right, that's soon sorted them out. Thread now to the front, several wraps, 2 foam tags down, this is the head, hold them together, stretch slightly, squeeze it there, come over, shorten off. I'm going to really crush that down, make that virtually disappear. Hold the 2 foam tags, final time, heave those back, the short nozzle, bite into the foam and make a little head. And in there you do your whip finish. Right in the neck. You only need about 2 or 3 turns there. Slide through. Take your scissors, stretch the near side foam tag. Just stretch and snip. And do the same on that side. Fibre there that's annoying me. And if you want to neaten that head up and make a distinct neck, drop now your whip finish finely in those cut ends. Pull through and just a little bit of final tinting and the job's done. Snip off, whisker there to trim off. Straighten your wing out, your nice Mohican wing. It should have a nice backward slope. Go around and push any hackle fibres back into place that got displaced. They should mostly be sort of on the sides, like that, and a full circle behind the fly. Any really silly fibres that you've misplaced and they're stuck down, just detach them. Loads of fibres there for it to sit on. So now, with my black pen, just blacken out those 2 foam tags, make it look like a black thorax. Quite dark around the wing roots, thoracic area. Give it some eyes, let it see where it's going. Same at this side. And put the Danica marks on. Use a dark brown marker pen and just darken the first 3 segments quite dark, and then just shade them off in pairs. In actual fact, it's more important to do the underside because that's the fisher's viewpoint. Take the fly out of the vise and I do these in my hand. These tend to be little marks up the side. They're less heavily marked on the belly side. Ephemera danica, our commonest river species, is marked in a quite distinctive way. It's got darkish bars across seems to be the last 2 segments, and then it's got sort of like paired ticks that go up the body up to about segment number 5, and they gradually get smaller. And on Vulgata, Vulgata's the one that likes the slow water, the muddier bottoms. You find them in lakes and even canals. That some people call that the dark mayfly. That's a distinctly darker body anyway, darker olive. And The marks go all the way up the abdomen. It's a very distinctive one. It's quite dark. And the other one, lineata, is the rare beast. I've just found out that it's now becoming reasonably common in some parts of, would you believe, on the River Thames. So lineata is our third species. Was very, very rare, but I read recently in Fly Fishing and Fly Tying that somebody's actually seen wagtails feeding the young this year on the newly emerged duns. So maybe we shall see this fly. Lineata is much paler, a sort of a pale yellow colour, in fact, a creamy yellow colour. So that's our green drake. That's the Mohican Mayfly that copies Ephemera danica. There's a whisker there, I'll just take off on the underside. One thing about this fly, by the way, I must tell you, because of the very wind-resistant wing, this always sits on its feet. It's a very good fly for sitting properly on the water. And I fancy that I'm going to do some damage with this one. I just really fancy it.